Well, hello there. Welcome back to today's Morning Moxie with Larisa. As you know, on my channel, we try and give you bite-sized pieces of inspiration and motivation to help you jumpstart your day. And we often talk about best practices for leadership, business management, and the business of life well lived. Now, today's topic is one that reared its ugly head, and so I had to share with you because we are talking about people behaving badly. Now, if you're anything like me, and I know you are, you're in constant contact with those people, humanoids that surround us in our day to day interactions. And when folks are, if it's like just a one off, you can usually just shrug it off and not even break your stride, right? But when it happens in what I call clumps or, kind of a series of back to back negative interactions, doesn't that just kind of weigh you down, create some anxiety or some additional stress that you really don't need when you're trying to build your empire, right? So I'm sure you know that, let's say if you have a vendor, sometimes they overcharge, the billing isn't accurate, they drop off the face of the earth, and you don't, there's no follow up. Terrible communication, especially for someone who, is theoretically working for your benefit, right? Same thing with team members. Sometimes there's poor performance or what I want to say, I was going to say inadequate performance, which is kind of the same, but I guess that really means when they're not really working up to standards, not just messing up, they're just not quite interpreting what you want to say or what you have instructed them to do. And, and then they don't ask questions and things are not done properly. And then there you are wondering, how could I have said it any differently? What could I have done differently? And with those questions, it's kind of like internalizing, like it's our fault. And I don't like to finger point and assign blame. That I don't find that helpful. But there are questions that come up. What could be done better? So let's just talk briefly for the vendors, right? You have to hire somebody to install this or to replace that or even provide a particular service. And so the first thing I would say, obviously, is to have a scope of work so that when you are asking for the service, there's a document to refer to. I do everything I can to prevent misunderstandings. But in particular, if you have to get multiple bids, you definitely want them to be apples to apples. So you give the vendor the same scope of work to bid on or bid against, however you want to say it, right? And definitely review the proposal once you receive it, clarify any questions or unclear matters before you sign on the dotted line, because, it is contract, it is in writing. And, once they have done the work, ensure that it's an acceptable level of work, because sometimes people just kind of are slapdash in their approach. And you have to, I don't want to say hold their feet to the fire, but you want to hold them to what they said they would do. And honestly, if they don't perform, you have to pay for that service because you agreed to it, but definitely talk with your dollars and walk away if need be. But ideally, you can get a referral from, a trusted source so that you pick good vendors. And I'm not saying they're all terrible, but once in a while they do just kind of try and slap you around a little bit, and it just does tend to make you unhappy. And I could give you my own personal horror story that I'm still in the middle of, but suffice it to say, I thought this video was worth making. And it's the same thing with a team member. I hired a virtual assistant, and I just did everything that I could for us to communicate clearly, and it was not working because, when you hire a virtual assistant as an independent contractor, you're paying for a certain amount of hours and you want, don't want to go over budget. Well, when he first started, I could not, he just kept working off the clock. I would give him something. It was taking more time than it was worth. I wanted to be able to give him these assignments and then go on and do whatever I needed to do. But he required definitely some hands-on follow through. So I couldn't just assign over here and continue on. It was like assign over here, follow up, stay on top, and just make sure it was right. So at the end of the day, I was working, I want to say working for him, but it was just not happening. Or just, no communication at all. There was like no response. This was an offshore person. And I don't know if that was the exact problem, but it was definitely challenging. And so I will say lesson learned, because, like I said, I created processes, which is what you want to do. You want to have a process in place. You want to verbally state, you want to have the checklist, and you want to have some, repeat back, ask questions, some dialogue, do what you can to make things as clear as possible. And you have to hold people accountable. If you're paying for the service, this person's supposed to be on your team, they're supposed to be helping you. So hold them accountable, take action to address the performance. Like, if it is not right, have them do it over. And again, have them repeat back to make sure there is understanding, hopefully. And if it doesn't work, at some point, you're going to have to terminate the relationship. I'm just saying, it was so distressing, because I'm pretty straightforward in my dealings with people. WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get with Larisa. I try and use the most basic language, so the words that I use have the common understanding that's in the dictionary. I'm not making things up, but it is still a challenge. And so at some point, things take a toll. So people behaving badly are not things that we can necessarily avoid. And like I said, it's like a, brush off and keep going if it's kind of like a one-off, but when they kind of clump together, it does weigh on you. So what I'm going to say is just kind of acknowledge it, but don't sink into the abyss of despair. Just because, that sounds kind of dark, but I was having a few moments there where that I was getting pretty discouraged, because, it kind of makes you want to ask that question, why? And we all know why has no answer, right? So I don't like to get stuck in why. I don't like to point fingers. I just like to correct, take action, and move on. So be aware of what you can and cannot control. You can try and work with this party if you think this party can be redeemed, but if they cannot, you have to cut your losses and let it go and move on. So try to acknowledge and address the issue at hand. If there is any correction that can be made, if the relationship can be salvaged, if it needs to be salvaged. Sometimes it just does not. It just, you want to cut your losses and move on. So take any correction action that is possible. Otherwise, let it go, get back to work. Let your magic lift you back up into the clouds so that you are not brought down by people behaving badly. So that has been today's Morning Moxie. Teeny little bit of a rant, just because I'm just clawing my way out of the ugly right now. But I know you've had this experience too. Maybe you want to share in the comments below what scenario that you have with people behaving badly, and how did you address it, and are you okay? So again, thanks for joining me. That's today's Morning Moxie, and I will see you on the next video. Cheers.